2, 3. So pan the audience. The advanced prosthetics that we see today haven't always been this way. The art of prostheses dates back to the ancient Egyptians and Greeks, to which we owe most of the momentum in this field. For all of eternity, people have lost their limbs and have tried to live life as normally as possible while missing their limb. Without the initial idea of replacing the limb with something else, people just went on with life as normal as possible. Egyptians created the prosthetics for the function of cosmetic appearance and the feeling of wholeness. A.J. Thurston says that sometimes the amputation was feared more than death because they thought that when they died, when they went to the afterlife, that they were still missing their limbs, still had to suffer for all of eternity. So the amputee, whenever they would get their leg amputated or their arm amputated, it would be placed in the ground and buried at the time that they lost their limb. And then when the amputee died, then they would dig up the limb, even if it was bones left, and re-bury it with the person so that they could join together as one whole person in the afterlife. National Geographic says that there's evidence of this practice can be seen in the Cairo Museum, where they actually found a mummy that had a prosthetic foot implanted on there when he lost half of his foot, and it looked somewhat like this, but made with wood and leather instead of metal like this. In the museum, they have it displayed where they took it off the mummy and they have it displayed next to it. Often prosthetics were made from leather and rope and wood, as I said, or anything that the person or the doctor could find that would resemble closely to a limb. A man named Ambroise Paré made the first true rehabilitation aid that could actually be called a prosthetic or orthotic at that time. He created a hand that was made of like pulleys and different catches of the metal so that a French army captain could use it actually in battle. The picture that I showed before is actually a picture of the hand that he had made. And also, the guy that revolutionized this work is Peter Verdun. He documented the development of his lower leg prosthetics that actually allowed for bending of the knee instead of just using it as kind of like a crutch. It could actually bend so that they could actually start doing therapy and learning to walk. And How Stuff Works says that many of the advances contributed by these two doctors mentioned above are still common uses used in making of prosthetics. Now it's just more advanced with more durable material and more hinges and advanced movement. During the earlier times, the purpose for these orthotics were merely just to hide the limb because no one ever thought that you could get function out of them again. So it was just not to scare the average person walking by. Isaac Clemens stated that knights wore revamped armor that was just made stronger in the limb that they missed, that were filled with heavy iron or metal that they actually wore of their armor, and then they would just weld on their shield to hold in battle instead of just going in without a arm and knowing that they were weak to their enemies. From the times of the ancient Egyptians to now, the process and design of these artificial limbs and the way they have been used have came a long way. Oscar Pistorius, which is an example of how advanced these prosthetics have came, he actually has both of his legs amputated and competed in the Olympics and won medals. His prosthetics are two carbon composite spring legs that are called cheetahs, which are seen. This is him with a picture of his prosthetics on, which is actually what he uses to run in the Olympics with. Some say that in future years that limbs will feel more and more mobile and be more efficient than we could ever imagine. Back in history, the machine was merely like a crutch with a cup on top of it, kind of like Peggy, the peg-leg pirates that we would see in movies and stuff. And now limbs are mobile and light, or even made out of space-age materials that some say just feel lighter than if they actually had a limb there. According to the National Academy of Science, research in this field hit a peak during World War II because the increasing amount of amputees they were seeing from the war because of the advanced bombs they were using with shrapnel inside of them and things, so people would lose more limbs. So that the government created the artificial limb program to kind of help these soldiers get back in the way of life and live normally. When it comes to prosthetics, there are 4 different types of prosthetics. There's transtibial, transhumeral, transfemoral, and transradial. And each one of these depends on the location that your limb was lost and how severe the amputation is. According to Ferguson, transfemoral prosthesis is an artificial limb that replaces the leg above the knee, which is a lot harder to recover from because you lose your the added help that your knee uses of moving the lower part of your leg. So these people that have this type of amputation have to use 80% more energy than a normal person with 2 normal legs would have to use to walk. Ivan Long says that transtibial prosthesis is an artificial limb that replaces a leg missing below the knee, which these are a lot easier to cope with because they're a lot easier to match in length and weight, so that they still have the full range of their knee. So they can actually walk still, it's just they have to have something to replace their foot. And then also there's the transfemoral amputation, or transradial amputation, which is a prosthetic of the artificial limb that replaces the arm missing below the elbow, which is just like the transhumeral one. And they can still use their arm and pick stuff up and use hooks and things because they don't have to physically move their arm up and down like this or bend it, because they actually have their elbow to do that for them. And then there are 2 main types of prosthetics for a transradial amputation. There's the type that's just a cable that's connected from one shoulder to your arm, and you kind of use a pulley that lifts your arm like this to use it to things. And then there's also a microelectric arm, which they place electrodes on the top of your arm, and your brain still sends signals down your arm like you have it. And so they connect and they detect the electric current, and they can actually make machines that can move your hands and your fingers on your prosthetic, so you can still move and do everything just as normal. Some people say that these are kind of scary because they're close to all of our fear of the iRobot type, taking over the world type of thing, but it's not any artificial intelligence, it's just strides in these research areas that help these people out. And surgery is a big determining factor in how well and how fast these patients recover. Back in the old days, amputations and most surgeries were done without anesthesia, so someone would hold the person down on all 4 sides and put a leather rope in their mouth, or put a rope in their mouth and just like take a saw like you see in a horror movie and cut their leg off and then burn it shut with a torch. And that was their amputation, and most of them didn't survive. But then this dentist in India came through and said that he could take the anesthesia that they started using when they pulled teeth and make it more powerful, and they could put these people to sleep while they cut off their limbs, which made the cutting much more better to be fitted for something to replace it. People for centuries have been dealing with the discomfort of their prosthetics, from their prosthetic to their to the nub where the amputation occurred. And so they would do things like stuff sponges and shirts or anything that was soft and durable inside of their prosthetic to kind of cushion their bone against their prosthetic. Well, Discovery News said that the Beth Project has just now invented a readjustable socket designed of infinitely remoldable material, which solves this problem. The cup consists of an electromeric liner that forms like a bladder filled like of liquid, and the person puts it on there and then connects like a vacuum, and it vacuums to the nub and makes it comfortable, and they can constantly readjust it as things change and move. The advancements that we have made from our new technology is more available at our fingertips and made millions of people restore their lives. Prosthetics that came a long way from the wood and leather and rubber skin like materials that maybe don't make people feel as empty as they used to. Functioning in life is getting better and easier, and this is showing how well our world is developing. These can help things such as wounded warriors and disease-stricken people in developing countries. Science like this could possibly change the world. Does anyone have any questions?
I think Brody does.
What's the bladder-like thing called again?
Electromeric fabric.
How long does therapy usually take before they can use it normally?
It really depends on the amputation. If it's something that's simple, like your arm, that you can use, your other arm on a daily basis, then it could take a year or two. But things that, like your leg or losing your foot, retraining yourself to walk, which is really, really hard, can take 2 to 3, sometimes even 4 years. You have to constantly play with different prosthetics and therapy techniques. Okay, if there's no more questions, then thank you.